Hello, everyone. With Russia holding their sham referenda in Ukraine to take over all the oblasts they illegally occupy, the threat of nuclear holocaust is now rising, and people are rightly concerned. Because of that, I've actually read some people advocating that we need to force Ukraine to make peace with Russia, because it's better that Ukraine gives up a portion of their territory than all the world gets plunged into nuclear chaos. And at first glance, that sounds reasonable. It sounds rational. And I know the people who are advocating for this, other than the obvious Russian trolls who are just regurgitating whatever Putin shoots into their mouth every morning, are well-meaning people, right? They want peace. They are afraid of the nuclear bombs, which is actually the reason why Putin made the threat. See, this is an act of terrorism, which is par for the course for Russia and Ukraine. The sooner Russia gets declared a terrorist state, the better the world will be. But just thinking about this for even 0.2 of a second shows how ludicrous the idea of forcing Ukraine to make peace would be. When Putin attacked Ukraine, he attacked all of Ukraine. He was trying to take over Kyiv. He said that it was going to be a 3 to 7 day invasion. He didn't just attack the Donbas. Now, why was it so broad? Because Putin wants all of Ukraine. If we force Ukraine to give up the Donbas to prevent nuclear war, well, guess who still has nuclear weapons at the end of that? And guess who now knows that he can just use the nuclear weapons to take whatever he wants because the world is too cowardly to resist? That's right, I'm talking about Kim Jong-un. Oh, you thought I was talking about Putin. Of course, he's going to take all of Ukraine and Poland and the Baltic states. I mean, because he's got nukes and the world has proven to be cowards, but he's not the only tyrant with nukes in this world. When we think of nuclear powers, we usually think of the US, Russia, UK, France, China, and probably you'd throw Israel in there too as one of the common ones. Although I think officially they've never admitted that they have nukes. It's just an open secret that everybody knows they do. But Pakistan, India, and North Korea all have nukes as well. And Iran is threatening to have them soon. So what do you think would happen if Israel knows that they can just force Iranian territory to become part of Israel by threatening to use their nukes if the world doesn't agree? Do you see how capitulation on this front is the absolute worst thing to do? Not only that, but think about what is being demanded when someone says that Ukraine should make peace with Russia. Everywhere Russia has been occupying the area when they're forced to leave because of the Ukrainian counteroffensives, we find torture rooms, we find bodies that have been mutilated, women who have been raped by the soldiers, children forcibly deported and adopted into new families in Russia, which is a crime against humanity. It's also a crime against the Geneva Convention to do this sort of thing. All of these are war crimes. Okay, do you really think that Russia is going to stop committing war crimes if the world forces Ukraine to give up the fight? And think of what peace means in Russia. Here's an interesting fact about the Russian language. The same word for peace, mir, is the same word that means world. So when Russians talk about Russian peace, they mean that the Russian world is supreme over all. You can't make peace with someone who thinks that peace is owning the entire world. This is the same concept in the Russian language. Now, I don't mean to say every Russian believes that, but this is the nature of where they come up with the ideas. This is the root of the words. So, as bad as it may sound to you, the reality is that the only way to protect the world is through the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. That is the only restraint against nuclear weapons. It's the knowledge that if you use your nukes in combat, you will be nuked in exchange. Anything less than that commitment will result in terrorist states owning the whole world. Might makes right in such a universe, and the one who has might but who says they will never use their weapons doesn't have might. What good is a nuclear deterrent when you take them off the table right from the start? They will only result in your own enslavement by those who will use the might. So it would be nice to live in a fairy tale land where the evil dragons would listen to reason and become good and stop burning up villages. But in this world that we inhabit, we sadly must stand firm against any terroristic threats, because not standing firm is just going to be that much worse for everyone. Now, that said, while it is definitely concerning that Putin is threatening nukes after these sham elections, I do believe that cooler heads will prevail. Even if Putin has completely lost his marbles, which I don't think he has. I think he's very evil and he's plotting and he doesn't know all the information, but I don't think he's actually insane. He's not the only person in the chain between the button getting pressed and a nuclear missile being launched in Russia. And I strongly believe that if Putin actually made the order to fire a nuke, he will wind up with a 9mm headache and the world will forget he ever existed. But even so, it still remains as a potential, right? So no matter how unlikely I think it will be, we should still be sober-minded and think about the issue during this time while we ourselves are calm and not under threat, specifically, while we can be rational. Coming to a principled, reasoned decision when you're not stuck in the heat of an emotional response will vastly help you make the right decision later on. So, if you want peace in Ukraine, the answer is actually very, very simple. Russia leaves. That's it. Russia is the aggressor here. The war would be over the second the last Russian soldier's boot leaves the soil of Ukraine. If Putin actually wants peace, that is how he can attain it right now, this second. Unconditional surrender, remove all the troops, give all the soil back to Ukraine where it belongs and where all the international communities agree Ukraine owns it, right? But in the meantime, since he's not going to do that, he might want to start preparing his own defenses in Russia because Dagestan isn't going to be an isolated incident. He kicked the hornet's nest when he did this partial, real, full, actual mobilization draft. That's not a draft. Let's just pretend words don't mean what they mean in Russian. And I think more than likely Putin using a nuke is less likely than Putin being dragged through the streets and Gaddafi'd. And with that, I hope you all have a wonderful evening.